Henry Cloud said that 80% of the leaders and executives he meets with do not have one person that they say they can actually confide in and be real with. That's our mission. We want to eliminate that. We want leaders to live in community and not alone. This is the L3 Leadership Podcast, episode number 255. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the L3 Leadership Podcast, where we are obsessed with helping you grow to your maximum potential and to maximize the impact of your leadership. My name is Doug Smith, and I am your host. And in today's episode, you're going to get to hear me being interviewed by one of my heroes and mentors, Pastor John Nuzzo. I've interviewed Pastor John Nuzzo several times for the podcast, and most recently in episode number 240. If you have not listened to that, I can't encourage you enough to go back. He actually talks about leadership lessons for every decade of life. And so I really encourage you to listen to that interview. It is incredible. So that being said, we're reversing the roles this time, and he'll be interviewing me. And so you'll hear me talk about my journey, what I'm learning in leadership, and so much more. And so I hope that it'll add value to your life. I hope that you'll enjoy this interview. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Baritone Advisors. The financial advisors at Baritone Advisors help educate and empower clients to help make informed financial decisions. Find out how Baritone Advisors can help you develop a customized financial plan for your financial future. Please visit their website at Baritone Advisors, that's BERATUNG, advisors.com. Securities and investment products and services offered through Waddell & Reed, Inc., member FINRA and SIPC. Baritone Advisors, Waddell & Reed, and L3 Leadership are separate entities. Hey leader, we tell you all the time that you should never do life alone, but in community. And so my question to you is, do you have a community of leaders that you can do life with? If you don't, I want to encourage you to become a part of our community, the L3 Leadership Community. And there's lots of ways to connect with us, but one I specifically want you to connect with is our membership platform. We've spent the last 4 months revamping and relaunching our membership site, and I could not be more excited about it. When you become a member of L3 Leadership, you're going to get to jump on live webinars with nationally known leaders, and we're going to be having these every single month for our members only. You'll have access to all of our L3 one-day talks. You'll have access to every course that we ever create and so much more. And all of this is available right now for free. That's right. We are offering 2 months of free membership. And after that, it's just $25 a month. And so leader, let me just tell you, you need to invest in yourself. And we believe so much in the platform and that it will add value to you that, again, we're offering your first 2 months free. So you can learn more about membership and sign up today at l3leadership.org/membership. And with all of that being said, let's dive right into the interview.
Welcome to this month's podcast. I have the great privilege this month to have with me Doug Smith, the founder and the president of L3 Leadership. I've known him for 16 years. I got to know Doug as a very young man, and what he's doing today is pretty remarkable through the company, not just in the region where you live in the Pittsburgh region, but it's gone far beyond that. Your podcast, I saw ranked in the top 25 leadership podcasts in the world, and that's a pretty good ranking. And it's exciting to see what God's doing through you, but it didn't start that way. And Doug, a lot of people, I'd like you just to speak to this today. A lot of people listening to this hear stories like yours, and they see the ending or kind of peaks. But this didn't start at the peak for you. So kind of, talk to everybody just about the journey of where you came in to know Christ actually, and where you were at in your life, and kind of where it brought you to today. And then I want to ask you some specifics about your passion for leadership.
Sure. Yeah, my background started when I was in middle school. 2 things happened significantly. I grew up with a pretty normal family life, having family nights every week. But in middle school, my mom got diagnosed with a rare nerve disease in her legs. If you've ever had pins and needles, she had that 24 hours a day. And as a result, ended up in a wheelchair, which also ultimately led to her being in bed almost 24 hours a day. As a result, our family, to get by, my dad had to take on 2 jobs. And so he went from being present in our lives to not being present at all, which led to us having no boundaries, never got grounded, never had a curfew, was always allowed to do whatever I wanted, which in middle school was awesome.
Yeah.
But it's not so great for setting you up for life. And as a result of that summer of my 8th grade year, started hanging out with the wrong crowd, got into drugs and alcohol, and really at that moment determined that I would never amount to anything with my life, stopped trying in school. My dad was a bus driver for our school district, and there's nothing wrong with being a bus driver, obviously, but I just thought, hey, I'll just be a bus driver like my dad. And just partied. Ended up finding out my mom, one of the medications she took was Oxycontins, which is synthetic heroin.
Man. Wow.
And I found out that these were in demand. And so I started selling them in my high school and just partied, literally all the way through 12th grade. Until my senior year of high school, multiple things happened. First was the beginning of my senior year, my mom passed away. Now, when she passed away, I had seen her suffer so long.
Yeah.
And so terribly that when she died, it didn't bother me that she died.
Right.
What did bother me was I didn't know if she had a relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
And I had no idea why that bothered me, wasn't living for God, didn't care about God, but that just tormented me night after night. Fast forward 3 months, out of nowhere, I get a call from a distant relative, and she just said, Doug, I really felt like the Lord laid you on my heart this morning and wanted me to call you and let you know that I was a nurse in the hospital with your mom, and I led her to Christ 3 weeks before she died.
Oh, that's absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, I cried. I don't remember the rest of what she said. And my knees hit the ground. And I just said, God, whatever you want for the rest of my life, I'm yours.
Wow.
So randomly 2 weeks later, or you could say randomly in quotes, I got invited to a Bible study that was led by a mom in our high school. 150 kids would go to this every week. It wasn't affiliated with the church. In a house.
Right.
And it was just a mom with a passion and just started a Bible study. I went that night, saw a beautiful girl sitting on the couch and determined that I was going every week. I told my friends that I had found my wife that I would marry. And so I determined to go back every week. What I didn't know happened was when I left that night, that girl that I saw on the couch that I thought was cute, she grabbed her mom and she said, Mom, I can't believe that kid came tonight. Doug, he's one of the most influential kids in our high school, but he uses all of his influence for drugs and alcohol. If he ever got a hold of God, he could change the world. Wow. I had no idea that conversation took place, but as a result, her mom started inviting me over for family dinners. And her dad is the director of admission at Carnegie Mellon. He became a father figure in my life, and he said, you're going to do something with your life. You're a leader. Wow. You're going to dream big and go for it. You're going to go to school and graduate. And they started bringing me to Victory Family Church. And, so my life started to turn around at that point. I ended up going to the youth camp here, rededicating my life to Christ. And that's when I heard about an internship here at the church. Now, to be honest, my only motive, I didn't even know what an internship was.
Neither did we. That's okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, either way, I signed up for it only because I literally thought, hey, if I'm working at a church, Laura, the girl on the couch, would think this is very attractive. And so I signed up and I had no clue what I was getting into. But I met Larry Betancourt, who was the youth pastor here for years. And he was the second person that came into my life, father figure, and he said, you're a leader, you can do great things. And between him and my father-in-law, they really grew me up. And I remember Larry handed me a John Maxwell CD, and I had no idea what personal growth or development was, and I put it in the tape player. I didn't even know it came with notes, and I got so fired up by the lesson that I transcribed the whole thing from hand and called Larry, and I said, please give me everything you have on leadership development. Wow. And so just started growing every night. I would listen to Maxwell for 2 or 3 hours. I got so passionate. I used to have parties at my house at this time, and my kids would come over and get drunk and high because my mom wasn't around and my dad was never there. Right. And one night I said, guys, I have something better than drugs and alcohol. Just sit here for a minute. And I printed everyone copies of notes. And I said, we're going to watch the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership on DVD. That's beautiful. And I put it in, and needless to say, no one wanted to watch that. So,
John Maxwell DVD or CD was probably not. Get high, Maxwell. Anyway,
it didn't work. But that was really the start of my journey, and I could go into more detail, but fast forward to just a lot of intentional growth later, here I am.
That's remarkable. And from when I met you as a young man to seeing you just go after God first, and then the passion you put in your heart for leadership, and it really is a calling on your life. And as a result, you've developed a company around it. And there's a grace, and I've watched that grace develop in your life. I think, Doug, a lot of times people think if they have a great idea, I'll just cultivate an idea or a business, and they think in terms of money. People who are trying to make money rarely do well in life, even if they make money. It's people that want to do something that make a difference, and in making a difference, they create a revenue stream. And that's what I've watched you do. And I know it's never been about the revenue stream. Right. It's about helping people. And in a minute, I want to kind of go into your company, L3 Leadership, but I want to just just pause just for a second, because I know John Maxwell is like out of if you can have a hero on the earth other than Jesus, it's John Maxwell. And so I think it's just fun for people to know that later and down the road, I'll be doing a podcast on this. I was able to go pheasant hunting with John Maxwell and like six other guys.
I'm not jealous at all, yeah.
Dude, it was a blast. And we just sat around for almost 4 days and just, it was surreal. It was remarkable. But I knew how much you loved him and the impact he had had in your life. And so I said, hey, would you mind doing a video with me to just, and I'll text it to Doug. And so John kind of just spoke to you on the video, and I'm going to arrange for you guys to have lunch at some point. And somewhere down the road, I'll do a podcast on those lessons from Maxwell at a pheasant hunt. And it was a blast. But
just so you know, I watch that almost every day, just to remind me that I add value to people. So thank you, and just thank you that you would honor me in such a way to take that time to do that. Oh, you bet, man.
Yeah. And but I've watched you do something that I've watched very few people do with their life. Doug, it's not just what you do with your company; it's what you've done with your life. I see a lot of young men and young women who have a passion, but that passion gets mixed with ego. It's very hard not to do when you're young. It's very, very hard. And you have to grow through that. And I'm not saying you don't have to deal with that like anyone else, but I've watched you navigate that by actually being forward thinking about other people. Even though I know you have a passion to fulfill a mission in the leadership market, if you will, and there'll be things I'm sure you'll write down the road and things you'll do, is I've watched you navigate that, and Laura as well, in a way to where I'm seeing you not get sidetracked by a lot of the things I see happening, and that commonly happen to men your age and women your age, is that the passion gets caught up with ego and the need to quote, feel successful, and it clouds your decisions. And the clarity with which you've chosen is massive. And so your company itself and the different avenues in which you help people lead and grow in their leadership. Talk to us a little bit about L3 Leadership. And I know you have an upcoming conference. There's the groups that you do. Just kind of talk to us a little bit about the company and add value to people now into what are you trying to accomplish in helping people on their leadership journey through L3 Leadership?
Yeah, I would say, to make it very simple, we just want to do for others what was done for me. I mean, that's what really started this passion. It was what Larry Betancourt did in my life. It was what Mike Seidel did in my life. They intentionally poured into me, believed in me, and really gave me a vision alongside God of what was possible with my life if I would just be intentional. I think back to even how we started. Larry would bring in speakers such as yourself from the community, and they would share their top leadership lessons, and Larry would say, listen, he would tell all the interns this: you just got to hear from a great leader. I encourage you to reach out to them, ask them to connect, see if they'll meet you for coffee, come loaded with questions, never show up without an agenda, thank them. And he gave us this whole process. So I just started doing that with leaders, and I did it every month for about 10 years. Then all of a sudden I realized my peers started saying, wow, Doug, you get to spend time with John Nuzzo. I wish I could. And I thought, have you ever asked? And most people never have. And so I saw an opportunity, and I thought, what if I just started recording my conversations with leaders? And I started doing that and sharing it with my peers. And that's how the podcast started. It wasn't because I wanted to have this cool podcast. Right. It was, what if I could share what I'm learning with others? And so that started the podcast. And then at the same time, I started getting around this vision of making Pittsburgh famous for God. Yeah. And every time I would hear that vision, my wife and I's heart would just explode with vision and say, like, we feel called to that. And specifically, we feel called to develop leaders. And there was a man named Reed Carpenter, and I don't have time to give this whole story, but in the 70s, he just started gathering leaders and developing them. And he, as he would say, he would just saw what the Holy Spirit would do. And they started developing people. And literally over the course of 50 years, I can't tell you how many nonprofits have formed out of that, how many churches, how many businesses. And so Laura and I just said, we want to do that for our generation. So we spent an hour and a half on the phone with Reed, and he just said, just start gathering people and see what the Holy Spirit does. And so we gathered on Mount Washington, we prayed over the city, and we just said, we feel called to develop leaders in our city. And we believe if we'll develop them and follow them for 5, 10, 15, 20 years and develop them to lead in whatever sector they represent, then we're going to win sectors and win our city for Christ by developing the leaders in that city. And so that's how we started. And we started just developing leaders by hosting monthly speaker events, just like Larry had done for me. Yes. And then what I would say our bread and butter is mastermind groups. And so
talk a little bit about that, because if someone is listening to this and they're in Florida, why can't be in a mastermind group? Not officially you can't, but the concept of it can be done anywhere, even if they're not a part of this. They can create their own environment.
Yep.
And talk about what a mastermind group is designed to do, because I've talked to people that are a part of them, and they're gold to people.
Yeah, so the concept originated in the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Andrew Carnegie had hired this man to study the top 50 most influential and affluent leaders of that day. And for 25 years, that's a long time to study people. And then write a book based on what he found made them successful. And one of the key core elements was they were all in what he called a mastermind alliance. And it's very, very simple. All it is a small group of people or leaders that get together, they share their goals with each other and hold each other accountable. And so I'd been to enough networking groups that I realized very quickly these are all worthless and they don't add any value at all.
Right.
Laura and I want to create the groups that we want. And so we started doing mastermind groups, and all they are is groups of 6 to 12 leaders that meet. For us, it's on a bi-weekly basis. Everyone shares their top 10 goals for the year. And then every quarter, those leaders basically are held accountable for their goals and update everyone on their progress.
Right.
And in the meetings in between, the most valuable part of our meetings is someone's on the hot seat. And so the hot seat's an opportunity to troubleshoot an issue you're going through. So an example could be, I want to start a company, but I have no idea how. I don't know the accounting. I don't know a lawyer, et cetera. Well, all of a sudden, you have the exposure of 12 other people and all their contacts, all their experience, all of their wisdom. And hopefully they get feedback. And by the end of your hot seat, you have a solution to whatever problem you had. Now, that's why we started it, so for people could grow and reach their goals.
Right.
I was shocked at how quickly it turned personal, and how quickly, not that people don't care about their goals, but people achieve their goals, but their marriage was in trouble.
Right.
Their kids were in trouble. And at the end of the day, what I thought would happen initially was by the end of the year, everyone in the mastermind group will start their own mastermind group and will multiply. What I found is most people just want a group of people to do life with consistently.
Yeah, they stuck together.
They stuck together. And so now our vision has become, we want everyone who joins a mastermind group to be fully known, fully loved, and fully challenged. So fully known, they can come as they are, where they are, and just be completely vulnerable. And they'll be fully loved where they're at, regardless of what they're going through. But we don't just leave them there. They're also fully challenged. And so we're not going to let you stay in your junk or let your marriage sit in the tank, let your kids sit in it, right? We're going to fix that issue. And so, I would just say, if you're a leader listening to this, one, we are going to be developing a course to help people launch their own mastermind group so they can go through that. But if you don't have that group of 6 to 12 people that you feel like you're doing life with, you are missing out. Too many leaders. Henry Cloud said that 80% of the leaders and executives he meets with do not have one person that they say they can actually confide in and be real with. That's the sad. That's our mission. We want to eliminate that. We want leaders to live in community and not alone.
So when you have created the mastermind groups, ultimately it's doing what you desire to do personally for people, is to engage them, care for them, love them, serve them. And so it isn't just a place where people come and take, because in our culture, very often that's what happens. Well, how can I become a part of this, and what's the gain for me? Mm-hmm. And I think to me, the secret sauce that I see, it's that a group of people that aren't just there for the gain, they're there for the give.
Yes.
And when you watch another person's success, and it means as much to you or is more to you than your own, that's a culture it's life.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. And I think one of the reasons you've been so successful at that is you live it. And so one of the things I'd like you to speak to, and when I consider the concept of the goals for leadership development for people, the things that you've put in front of people, these are steps you can take. These are things you can do. There are 1,000 things that people can learn about leadership. But the reality of it is this: the heart behind a godly leader is not really about just the content. It's actually more about assimilating it to where you live it beyond you and you raise other people up. And I've watched you and Laura live that way, where you've wanted to lift others up. There are young leaders that will listen to this. There are older leaders. And one of the challenges I see that what leaders long for is a place of honor and humility and actually trust in the people that they serve. And what very often happens in our leadership culture today, particularly in the generation coming up, because I think it's the greatest generation in American history coming up spiritually. I think they're going to do things that are going to shake the world in ways that no one can imagine. But one of the dangers that come in this generation that we didn't have to contend with is the constant onslaught of social media comparison. and always judging yourself in light of what other people have either they're saying about you or you think they're saying about you, or comparing yourself because you're constantly seeing all these other influences. How have you maintained what I see very often missing in this generation? You've maintained a place of honor for the people that are ahead of you, even though the manner in which they may lead and the calling they may have isn't yours. You've maintained a place of honor toward them. And as a result, those people, and I've watched some of the most influential people that are known in this region long to help you. And it's not because they think you're smarter than anyone else. No, but really, yeah, I mean, yeah. You're doing well, but it's not the reason, because I've talked to them. Right. When I met the coach of the Steelers, when it comes and does a men's meeting here with the Man Up Conference, I think this will be the third year coming. He brought your name up, and I love that kid. The former manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates, Clint Hurdle, your name comes up. I love that kid. People that run CEOs of companies, I'll meet them and interact with them, and they don't know who I am. Victory Family Church, and they go, "Do you know Doug Smith?" I said, "Oh yeah, he's a great guy. I love that kid." There's something that you've done in you and Laura both with a place of honor that has drawn these resources to you, or they want to help you. Every person I know that's interacted with you, they want to help you, and that's the most important thing this generation coming up can gain from older people is their wisdom, not their how to do what I do exactly how I need to do it. And it seems that when you lack honor, you'll lose that influence, you'll lose that information. But you've crossed that journey, you've crossed that barrier. How have you, in your desire to be unique to your generation, which you are, how did you do that while honoring the people ahead of you? Where'd that value come from?
I think when it comes to honor, one, and I'm not just, this is brown nosing, you taught it. I feel like you developed a culture of honor here. So for me, it was just hearing that over and over and over again. I mean, you would constantly tell us, hey, don't put people on a pedestal that are 3 years older than you, because they haven't made their mistakes yet. And so I think there's a wisdom that comes, like you said, with experience. And now I still consider myself in the early stages of my leadership development. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've seen peers just disrespect the older generation. I'm thinking, you have no idea the price they paid, and I can't wait till you sit in their seat and have to pay the price and make some of the decisions and sacrifices that they had to make, and see how you react. And hopefully at that time they repent. But for me, I think I just admire the journey, and I want to make it to the finish line. I think you said one time that you believe only 2% of Christian leaders make it to their finish line. And I think a lot of times it's because they focus on themselves and they forget about learning the wisdom that they can draw from the older generation. So I've always had a hunger for leadership. So I think part of that's just I want to learn from those who are older. Not that peers don't have anything to offer me. I don't know. Right. Part of it's just who I am, but part of it's just that's what I've always been taught since I started this intentional living with Pastor Larry and yourself.
Well, I think those kind of choices for even not just a younger leader, but an older leader, to always honor people that have had the opportunity to be where you haven't been yet.
Yeah.
And the thing that reduces honor in a person, and every leader goes through this, is that we judge what somebody did from a perspective we don't have.
Yes.
Or we judge them based on where we were in our life and how they interacted with us based on what we think we know. And I look back at my journey in my life. I'm 59, and I think, oh, that was stupid. Oh, that was stupid. And what was I thinking? I wasn't. But I also wasn't learning. Assumption removes the ability to learn. And so what I've watched you do, though, is to maintain that position of humility, and it honestly becomes a magnet. And so one of the reasons I've been able to learn from older people than me is because of I've chosen to honor them. Yeah. In the sense that I haven't been where they are. Now, I'm old enough to know that spending time with John Maxwell is a rare thing to get to do. And I wasn't going to waste a moment of it. And I didn't want him to know anything about me. I didn't need him to know anything about me, anything we did, good, bad, or ugly. I wanted to know everything I could know that man could put into my heart. Yeah. And so that's where the ego part disappears for people. And if you're younger, you're older listening to this, I really want to encourage you. You've got to decide that I'm not going to judge things I don't know. I'm not going to judge where I haven't been.
Yeah.
And if I were speaking to a younger leader today, I would say, let it go. Stop trying to tell people what you won't do and just do what you're called to do. And that's one of the greatest things that an adjustment I had to make when I was around your age is to stop telling people, we're not this kind of organization. We aren't going to be this, and stop that. That's judgmental. It's full of assumption and pride. Simply say, this is what we are called to do. And I've never seen you have to, I'm sure you've had to journey through that, but the way you've presented yourself, and I think that's why your company, your influence is growing exponentially, because you've created no barriers for people to come alongside you. So if you were going to kind of go a takeaway today, whether it's a young leader, an old leader, because I've watched you grow in ways that, and I'll tell you exactly what I told John Maxwell, and this is honest. I said, in the 26-year history of this church, I've never seen a young man or a woman come into this church in the condition you came here and go where you've gone in your life. From spiritually, your natural situation and circumstance, I've never, and I told this to John, I said, John, in 26 years, I've never seen anybody have the arc that you've had. And so the reason I'm having you on this podcast is not because of some accomplishment. It's because of a journey in 16 years that I cannot point to anyone else that I would say that arc has been more fruitful. And that's a remarkable thing, because I've met a lot of people and interacted with a lot of people. And so the takeaway from someone like you, if you're listening to this podcast, is important to me, because these are the things that can change someone's life, because that arc has been absolutely incredible. So if you were to leave somebody with a final thought, regardless of your age and leadership, what would be the thing you would say, this is what I'd want to leave you with if I could only tell you one thing?
Yeah, well, I want to say a few things, but I would say you're enough, and you're enough in God, and to follow God. That sounds very, very, very simple. But even as of last week, you talked about comparison, and something that significantly impacted me last week was there's this whole concept called the gap and the gain. And so many times people measure against their ideals. And when you do that in a positive way, you can gain inspiration from it. But when you do it in a negative way, it's a never-ending chase.
Right.
And for me, there's been times in my journey where I just shut down because I'm constantly chasing a horizon that I can never reach. And that's when I become judgmental. That's when I start comparing. And it's all rooted back to my insecurity, and I'm measuring myself against something I'll never attain.
Right.
And so what this concept teaches you is the only way to actually feel happy and feel successful is to measure backward, measure where you came from. And I think if you follow God and realize the mess that he took you out of, you can look back and say, I love in Psalm 113, it says, he took me from the dung heap and he set me on high. I think it's just being a constant reminder of, hey, before Christ, I was in a dung heap, and literally every breath that I get to take, every day I get to live, every person I get to love is a gift from God. And so for me, I feel like that keeps me rooted and grounded when I'm at my best. When I get off track, start feeling down, start comparing myself, start judging leaders, start dishonoring people, it's usually because I haven't gone back to my roots in God and remember where I came from. And
then I guess one final thing is that people don't know about you that I didn't give you the chance to talk about. Is you're employed in an organization on top of this.
Correct.
And this is an organization that you said if it wasn't for God, you would have been a client.
Yeah.
And I think, so tell us a little bit about what you do and what that organization is about. And I want you the listener to remember this. This is not an exaggeration. This young man is not making something up when he tells you he believes he would have been a client of this organization rather than the incredible thing you do there now as a leader. So just tell us just a little bit about Light of Life.
Yep. So Light of Life is a nonprofit rescue mission on the north side of Pittsburgh. We've been serving the homeless men, women, and children of Pittsburgh since 1952. I'm the director of development there. I'm in charge of all the fundraising. We have a pretty large budget, but
you guys are in a building program right now, right?
We are. We're in the middle of a $20 million capital campaign, so that's fun.
Yes.
You've lived that world. But yeah, we serve men, women, and children who are at their lowest point in their lives. I mean, the people who coming to us have burnt every bridge you can imagine. They have no relationships left. They're at the lowest point. And when I first got on staff at Light of Life, I literally just took it as a job to get me by, really until I could be on staff somewhere else, but really felt like God started calling me there and made the decision to stay there. And shortly after I made that decision, 1 year into my career there, a family member came to me, a very close family member. She was 5 months pregnant with my nephew, just to be real. And she said, I need help. And I said, what do you mean you need help? And she said, I'm a heroin addict. And I had no idea what to do. Now, I had done drugs with her, got high with her in high school.
Yep.
And fortunately, I was at the mission, and our program director to this day has continued to walk my family through this person's addiction. And I'm so grateful for the resources. But literally, I think back to high school, literally the only difference between this family member and me was I got that phone call I talked about in the beginning of this interview saying, I led your mom to Christ. At that point, my life went one direction, and that person just kept going down the same road. And so literally, I have no doubt the road I was on, my friends all thought I was an addict. They thought I had problems. And I have no doubt that I would be walking. If it wasn't Light of Life, I would be in some kind of rehab program, and my life would probably be a mess.
So I'm going to ask you to pray for everybody as we go. And I just want to encourage every person listening to this, particularly those who feel like, gosh, I'm not producing what I wish I could have produced in life or should have. It doesn't take massive amounts of people to make an influence. If people were to say to me, what's most significant to me, it's not the size of this church. It's not the cost of the campus. It's individual stories like yours. And so that's what matters.
Yeah.
And so people don't know the young man or the young woman in their care right now that God is going to use to lift people and love people and build things and serve people that I'll never live to even see. And many of us have planted trees will never sit under its shade. And that's okay. That's how it's supposed to be. And so I just wanted people to have an understanding and the opportunity to meet you and to meet somebody who God has done a great thing through and will continue to do, but also to encourage people to realize that sitting around them are the Doug Smiths of the world that people would have looked at and given up on because of their circumstances. But Jesus can extract the precious out of what people have deemed worthless. And you have been an absolute testimony of the grace of God. I love you like a son. I'm so honored to see what you're doing. Michelle and I mean this sincerely. Your success means 1,000 times more to us than our own. And you just mean just everything to us, you and Laura, and those babies that you'll keep making babies. I'm telling you, you guys do it well.
Yep.
I just want 8 or 9, we'll be fine. And so, but would you pray for everybody, and we'll be on our way this month.
Sure. Father, I thank you for every leader listening to this podcast, Father. And Lord, I just pray that more than anything, they follow you, that they know you and walk with you every day. Lord, that they don't look to others for their success or validation, Father, but they just look to you, Lord, and they rely on you alone and live to please an audience of one. Father, whether it's them encouraging someone daily or just impacting one life, Lord, I just pray that you just lead them every day to divine appointments to make an impact and add value to people. And Lord, I pray that you would just use them greatly in the lives of others, Father. Lord, I pray that you intentionally show them people who other people may overlook, Father, to encourage, to lift up, and to provide guidance to, Lord. So thank you for that. Thank you for Pastor John and Michelle. Thank you for their leadership. Thank you for the culture of honor they've created. And we just thank you for all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I'd like to thank our sponsor, Henny Jewelers. They're a jeweler owned by my friend and mentor, John Henny. My wife, Laura, and I both got our engagement and our wedding rings at Henny Jewelers, and we absolutely love them. Not only do they have great jewelry, but they also invest in people. In fact, they give every engaged couple a book to help them prepare for their marriage, and we just love that. And so if you're in need of a good jeweler, check out Henny Jewelers at hennyjewelers.com. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, BAB Inc. BAB is an insurance broker, a third-party administrator, and consulting firm led by my friend and mentor, Russell Livingston. Russell is extremely passionate about developing the next generation of leaders, which is why he's partnering with us on this podcast, and he's also opened up his offices here in Pittsburgh to host our monthly leadership events, and we are extremely grateful for that. The nonprofit that I work at, Light of Life Rescue Mission, started using BAB as our insurance broker around 3 years ago, and we've had an unbelievable experience with them, and we highly recommend them. So if you or your organization has any insurance needs, please check out and learn more about BAB at babbins.com. That's BABBINS.com. Hey, everyone, and thank you so much for listening to me being interviewed by my hero, Pastor John Nuzzo. I hope that it added value to your life. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a rating and review on iTunes and share it on social media. Let us know what your key takeaways were. And again, thank you so much for that. And you can get links to everything that we discussed in the show notes at l3leadership.org/episode 255. And as always, I like to end with a quote, and I will quote someone anonymously said this one time, and I love this. They said, if you are willing to do more than you are paid to do, eventually you will be paid to do more than you do. I love that. I'll say it one more time. If you are willing to do more than you are paid to do, eventually you will be paid to do more than you do. Hey, thanks for listening and being a part of L3 Leadership. Laura and I appreciate you so much, and we will talk to you next episode.